YEBW event. Thank you to Dawn for inviting me out. It's really great to see you all. I know that I was maybe not as proactive in my high school years, so it's really cool to see so many of you guys doing that and being interested in your career so early on. Anyway, my name is Candace, like I said. I am a micro-influencer and a marketing manager and a photographer based here in Portland. I do consulting for local businesses in town, helping them to establish themselves to their audiences online, mainly through Instagram, and I also am the marketing manager for a local tea startup called Tea Bar. But in a nutshell, what I do is offer my services either through consulting or through photography to help people understand social media and why they need it and what the best practices should be. And I've worked with some brands locally that you might know, like Brew Dr. Kombucha or Bamboo Sushi. And then on the flip side, I do a little bit of micro-influencer work where I open myself up a little bit more personally to my audience. And I talk about things like self-love and body positivity. And through that, I've been able to kind of work with brands a little bit more nationally known, like Forever 21 or Aerie. Basically, to wrap it up, what I do is connect the consumer with brands and hold those brands accountable to be more transparent and connect with their audiences online. I really believe that social media is a really powerful tool, and if used correctly, like, we will be able to grow and find our tribe a little bit easier. So that's kind of me.
Hi everybody, my name is Genevieve LeMarchal, and I am from here, from the Portland area. And I was pretty proactive in high school, I think, with organizations like this. Not YEBW, we didn't have this in my school. And so I went to school at Washington State University. I majored in public relations, which is actually kind of more journalism. Ancient Greek history. Yeah. It's weird. If I could go back and do it again, though, I would have majored in art history, just straight across. But anyway, and then I've always worked in startups, and I thought something was wrong with me. In fact, I got turned. My very first job out of school was at a startup, and 6 months later, I was unemployed along with everyone else. And I came back here to Portland, and I tried to get a job, and I couldn't get one because people had no idea what my experience was. And buried in my resume, at the very bottom in tiny letters, was my real skill sets, because I didn't think they were actual skills, which was, at the time, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, WordPress. I was actually a digital designer, but I didn't know it. Because I never had the mentorship of anyone actually telling me that these were skills. I thought playing on computers was a hobby. So, I missed my calling, yeah. Anyway, so I ended up going to work for the only company that I could get hired at that had the best management training program and wouldn't require me to wear a vest. That was literally my criteria, was no vest. And so that was Enterprise Holdings, which it's the largest owner of fleet cars in the world, and they own Enterprise Rental Car. So anyway, I was renting cars, and I remember crying when I accepted the job, and the recruiter was like, "Are you okay? Like, what's wrong with you?" Anyway, so fast forward a couple years, eventually I ended up back in the startup world. I got an MBA from the University of Washington up in Seattle. I have been in technology startups, I've been in apparel companies, I've done e-commerce, I've had a lot of different experiences, both as a founder as well as early teens. But and in those positions, you've always kind of been a leader. And then pretty recently, I found myself in some interesting leadership positions. A group of people who were gathering in my kitchen to learn sales eventually turned into something called the Accelerate Fund, which is a 12-month accelerator and loan fund for women-led businesses. And this next year, we're expanding from Portland into Seattle and Boise. and the next year into San Francisco. So it's turned into this whole thing. And then I also became the general partner of a venture capital fund, and that happened, I became GP in February earlier of this year. So it's been a journey, and yeah.
Good morning, ladies. I'm Diana Hoff, and I manage a private family foundation called the Renaissance Foundation. We specialize in providing scholarships to college students to attend college and graduate from college. I actually went to high school and college in Boise, Idaho, so we have something to talk about. I started out, I was really good in math in high school, so I thought I wanted to be a CPA, an accountant. So my first 2 years I took lots of accounting classes and realized, oh, this is really boring. I don't want to be an accountant. So I majored in business, and I worked my way through college. At the time, Sears had a large credit office in Boise, and they had shifts from 4 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, 25 hours a week. And that was a great job for a college student because I could attend classes during the day and work in the evenings. And so 5 years later, when I got out of college, I applied for a management position at Sears, and the position was in Tigard, Oregon. So I moved to Tigard and ran a credit office there. I was their HR manager, human resources manager, for 5 years until we closed that office. I helped a lot of our employees find other employment in the area, and there was a new startup company called Renaissance Bank Card Services that was issuing and servicing secured credit cards. And because we came from a credit card servicing company, a whole bunch of our employees were hired by Renaissance, and I eventually was also hired as their HR manager. We grew that company. I think I was employee number 33, and we sold it 7 years later. We had 1,400 employees, so I did a lot of various project management jobs. But that's where the Renaissance Foundation comes in, is because when we sold that company, that's how the Renaissance Foundation got created. And that was 18 years ago, and I've enjoyed my work ever since, and just really feel like I found my calling in helping college students. Just really, you're the next generation of leaders, and I feel like I'm helping one student at a time. So it's exciting to see you all here today. I'm also a YEBW volunteer. I've volunteered at the camp the last couple of summers. And then I love the organization and the work that we do so much that I was invited to join the board, and I've been a board member for about a year. Thank you.
Wow, that's really tough to follow. Wow, all right. My name is Jennifer Flickinger, and I work for the Wealth Solutions Group at Private Bank. Geez, I started my career when I was in college. I graduated from the University of Utah, and I was a dance major, music minor. And so I wanted to make some money while I was going to school, so I worked for a bank. And I got to thinking, you know what, I kind of like this. And I probably will make more money than dancing, right? So I started working at a bank. And my philosophy, my entire career, I won't tell you how long it's been. I think the dinosaurs rocked when I started. My curiosity was I wanted to know every position that I worked with. I want to understand every facet. So I was a collector. I was a credit collector. I was a teller. I opened new accounts. I became what we call a branch manager. And I started in Utah, and then I went to Alaska. And there, any management positions, they held them for quite a long time. So other than taking contracts out on them to eliminate them, to get them out of the way, I actually was introduced to a gentleman that ran a trust department. How many understand what a trust department does? So when people have wills and they die, I'm one of those people that actually carry out what they've drafted. So I spent several years doing that. I then had an opportunity to go to Los Angeles for 2 years. And it was 8 years worth of experience in 2 years. It was very gruesome, very intense, but it was the best training I ever got because I'm always curious. I have a very high boredom rate. How many of you have a high boredom rate? I'm sensing a lot of you do. So I've always got to be learning. I've always got to be trying and testing because that's what motivates me. So then I came back to Oregon. So I've been with organizations like Wells Fargo Bank, US Bank, Citibank, Smith Barney. So you can see where my boredom threshold is. But along the way, I've always been learning to better myself, but also to help work with people. So I was a producer. I worked with families and business owners and CEOs of companies, and my job was to help coordinate their wealth. From what do you own, what is your banking doing for you, what are your investments doing for you, insurance, and then estate and tax planning. So making sure that they're fully aware of their balance sheet, but also able to transition their business to the next generation. Sound familiar of things that you were learning through Business Week and Investing Week? That's what we would do for individuals. But I also found that being an individual producer wasn't enough for me. I really like mentoring people. So I work with our next generation of planners to teach them what they need to be thinking about, to go out on the field with them and show them how to do it. That's my love. So that's why YEBW was so appealing to me, because I want to help the next generation. I want to be that leg up over the fence to show you how it's done, where to go, what to do, and be a resource. So I'm so thrilled to be here and see all of you and to be part of this organization.
I'm going to start back down here with Candace. So the first question is, what was your earliest experience in a leadership position?
When I was in 4th or 5th grade, I was in DI. Is anyone here in DI, Destination Imagination? It's an organization that essentially teaches students leadership skills, problem-solving skills through a series of tests, or I guess just like events, conventions, things like that. And essentially you build a team through kids in your school, and you are in charge of solving the problem throughout the year, and at the convention you present the problem to judges. And when you're in 4th or 5th grade, you're a little bit more concerned with what's on Disney Channel, or like maybe like the cool clips that your best friend had in her hair the other day. So for me, being in DI was something that was a fun hobby, but now looking back was something that taught me immense leadership skills. You know, you manage a team of kids that you're with, and you are in charge of not only solving the problem, doing the task that you're given, but also working together to do it, and do it well and do it right. So I'd say that was definitely like a first experience in leadership.
That was hard. I had to think back really far. What I think I can remember though is I think my first leadership experience was selling rubber bands in my neighborhood. We found a really big box of rubber bands, and so we were selling them for a penny each or $1 for a bag. And then I started getting all of the other neighborhood kids to sell them too, and so we franchised. and so I think that was so then I had my little like sales team going to the different blocks because I wasn't allowed to cross certain streets. So I think that was
How much did you sell them for?
$1 for a bag.
For a bag.
For a bag, yeah, it was a deal. Yeah. And so we sold so much rubber bands that we were able to go to the store up the street and buy enough candy to cover the floor of the treehouse, and then we ate it all at once. And then we had no more money to buy more rubber bands. So we had to disband the rubber band conglomerate.
That was awesome. So for me, I think my earliest memory was I was in Girl Scouts, and my sisters were in Brownies, and so I must have been, what, 5th, 6th grade? Is that? Girl Scout age. Anyone in here in Girl Scouts or been in Girl Scouts? Is it like 5th, 6th grade? Oh, okay. So, well, I think my sisters were in 2nd grade and I was in 5th grade when I was in Girl Scouts, and they were in Brownies. And I remember always, volunteering to organize everything that we did and help with my sister's Brownie group. And so for me, I think I just naturally kind of always wanted to help organize events and organize activities, and just kind of took that leadership role with the other girls in the clubs that I was in. It's my earliest.
You can remember, that's good. I'm a late bloomer. I swam competitively, so I was, in my earlier years, I was team captain on our swimming team, but really, when we think about leadership, I was the student body vice president when I was in 9th grade of my middle school. So I had to go through the whole campaigning, like we've been experiencing for several months, for our Senate races and our governor race. And so I was elected by the student body and spent that entire year when I was in 9th grade advocating for the students and communicating with the administration in the school. So that would be my first big encounter as a leader.
Actually, an add-on question that's not on the sheet, but does being a leader come naturally to all of you? As you talk about your earliest experiences, is it something that came naturally, or do you feel like you developed it over time, experience?
Personally speaking, I feel like it's something that maybe develops over time. I don't feel like I, especially at a young age, was like, I'm gonna be a leader, here's what I'm gonna do. I think it just, depending on the situation that you're put in and where you feel most comfortable, you might feel more comfortable taking the lead in some situations. You might feel more comfortable, taking a step back or watching someone lead and then maybe leading by their example. But for me, it definitely was something that took time and still takes time.
Just my personality, I've always been a little more outgoing and kind of vivacious. So I think that I was given leadership roles without even really realizing that that's what was happening. But becoming a good leader has taken time, and it's still taking time.
Yeah, I agree. It takes a lot of time, and I didn't even really realize I was a leader until I was much older. And then I started proactively, looking at other leaders and wanting to learn from other leaders so that I could become a good leader.
I tend to think that it's in your DNA. I think you have a tendency to be a leader. You learn over time how to bring that out, but I think instinctively you are. I would bet that most of you, when a situation requires someone to raise their hand, you raise your hand. You just can't help yourself, right? Or if you see that someone's in need or help, you're probably the first one to step in. So I think it's inherent, but that you fine-tune it over time.
Is there one skill you have developed that's helped you become a leader? Is there one skill you can point to that you think is really important to your success?
Yeah, this may not be categorized as a skill specifically, but I think it's something that has been talked about, especially lately, and that's learning to take up space. And what I mean by that is, taking ownership of your ability to lead in a space. I think as women, sometimes we are taught to, be quiet, be polite, be a little bit more conservative with what we say outright. And taking up space, I think, is walking into a room and knowing that you deserve to be there. Taking ownership of your voice and your opinion, and knowing that you have something to say or something to give in that moment or in that environment. And it's something that I believe that I'm still learning, but I think it's something that's so crucial to the growth of a leader. So.
totally agree. And I think it's something you have to learn over and over and over again, because our tendency, at least mine, is to say, oh, wait a minute, I don't belong here, and shrink away. And in fact, there was an instance a little bit earlier this year where I was in a room and someone, sent me a text message that said, oh, how's it going? I said, oh, it's okay. It's just a whole bunch of VCs, though. I feel like maybe I'm, and they said, you are a VC, Genevieve. And I wasn't, but I just didn't feel I belonged. So I think probably in terms of a skill that you can cultivate, because you're just gonna have that feeling and it's probably never gonna totally go away, is learning how to present yourself, even when you sometimes feel like the opposite of how you want to present yourself. And the way that you can do that is through getting comfortable with speaking publicly. So whether it's standing up in a room at a meeting and just being clear and articulate in how you talk and how you stand, you can use that when you feel internally very terrified. But if you don't look like it, it will get you through. And that I think is a skill to cultivate.
I totally agree. I mean, I think the fear of public speaking is like the #1 fear in the world. And it took me years and years of practice. When I was asked to serve on this panel, I mean, I jumped at the chance, but probably 5 years ago, I would have said, oh no, I can't sit in front of a group of young women and speak to them. So, it's something I've been building and I'm still continuing to improve. So, and I didn't start even thinking about it till maybe 10 years ago. So, it's really admiring to see all of you young women here and that you're starting so young and so early, and it's really inspiring to me to have you all here.
Confidence. Confidence is a skill that you have to have. Confidence in who you are, what you bring to the table, and opinions that matter. We're always going to live in a world that's not perfect, that's going to judge us. I come from a generation where old social norms dictated where we belonged and where we didn't. So if you're going to have a skill set, #1 would be feel comfortable talking in front of a group. Even though I've always been a bit extroverted, I was never really comfortable with sales until I was forced to do it. And I cussed my boss out for 2 years, but it was the best thing I ever learned. The challenge for you, or the goal would be, if you can walk into a ballroom and feel comfortable walking through those doors, because you know what I realized? Everybody else in that ballroom is feeling the same way I am. Everybody's afraid to initiate that conversation. So we used to have a bet. When we'd go into these events, we'd say, okay, whoever gets the most business cards and meets the most people will get a free dinner. So we took it as a goal to meet as many people as we could, and that made it easier and easier. But just know that you have a lot to offer, that you're smart, you're just as capable as anybody else in that room, and show it.
So a big hot topic now is all around mentorship and finding people that you can look up to, and especially as women, finding female leaders that you can connect with and learn from. So do you all have mentors that you look up to, or is there a role model that has really defined your career in leadership? And then what's some advice for these ladies to find potential mentors or just role models?
I mean, I personally am inspired by so many women in my life, like from my mother to my boss. I would say that, sorry, what was the question?
Do you have any role models or mentors in your life?
Okay.
And then how do you go about finding those if you don't for these ladies?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, yes, I definitely have some. In terms of finding them, I think it's just all about defining what a leader or what a mentor might look like to you. So is it somebody that's in an industry that you aspire to be in? Is it somebody local who is maybe part of an organization that you want to be a part of? And then thinking of ways that you might reach out to them, whether you feel like you could help them continue the work that they're doing, or just sit down and get coffee with them and ask them a few questions that you have. I think direct communication is just kind of like the way to go.
I've had a lot of mentors. A lot of them have been men, but some of the people who have been mentors to me probably don't know that they've been my mentor. I don't think it's like a formal relationship where you shake hands and you're like, I will become your mentor. You know, I think, I think it just sort of develops, and there are certain people who will be mentors to you in certain areas. Like, you know, for example, I really admire Glennon Doyle Melton. I don't know her, I wish I did, but I really like her voice and how she just stands up and puts it out there, and she makes me feel a little bit more brave. But then I've also had mentors, you know, here in town in Portland who helped me with specific times of my career and specific times of my life. But I think one of the things that's important to note is I'm really careful about who I'm friends with, and who I surround myself with. You know, even if they're not necessarily people I'm looking up to, I am looking up to my friends. And I used to think that I had to maybe, you know, when I was in high school and college, you know, that my friends, I had some friends who weren't very nice, like weren't very cool, and I don't know why I was friends with them. But you know, now my friends are mentors to me, and you know, there's a saying, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, that you become sort of the summation of the 5 people that you spend your time with. And I do think that there's some truth to that. And so, you know, in addition to finding the people that you naturally connect with and click with who might be able to mentor you, I think it's really important to curate your friends. And I think the way to do that is to just come to people, whether it's a friend or a potential mentor, and just if you like them and if you like what they're doing, just ask them how you can help them. You know, come with a place of giving, or you know, rather than just saying like, hey, can I pick your brain? You know, like that's a little open-ended and weird, but say, I really, you know, I love what you're doing, I'd love to help you, or I'd love to learn, you know, can we talk about maybe how I can help? That's a really way to get a mentor relationship kind of moving along.
I think that's really great advice. I do a lot of the same things, and I really look for opportunities in the community to either by attending events where there's a speaker I'm interested in meeting, or belonging to an organization. There might be organizations at your schools or out in your communities, and that's how I meet people. And my goal when I attend an event is always to connect with just one or two people that I want to get to know better, build a relationship with. I have a table upstairs with some information on an organization that I brought to Portland called the National Association of Women Business Owners. It's an organization that's international. It was founded back in 1975, so it's been around a really long time, and I was attracted to it because it's an advocacy organization for women in business, and I have met some just phenomenal women nationally and internationally through the organization, and felt like we needed a chapter in Portland, so we just launched a chapter about 2 years ago, and we do have student memberships, and so something, whether it's that organization or another one where you can get access to a network where you can find women that have the skills that you're looking for mentorship is another great way to explore and find the right mentors for yourself.
So I work in an industry that's predominantly male dominated. And when I was in Los Angeles, I worked with a group of women, executives. They were all attorneys, practicing attorneys, and decided that they didn't want to work 180 hours a week anymore. So we worked right downtown Los Angeles, and we worked really hard, and we played really hard, but the one thing I took away, we all do this. How are you guys doing? And I remember someone came into the group, and she was my boss at the time. She goes, "Do I look like a guy to you? We're ladies in this room." And from that moment on, I never did that again. It was always, "Good morning, ladies. How you doing? What are we going to accomplish today?" That was a big turning point for me. And seeing these powerful women right in the trenches with me, working hard, playing hard, and making decisions on the fly. If it wasn't working, we were going to go this way. We're going to try it. If it didn't work, okay, we're going to go this way. So to see that intensity and that willingness to take input and make a change is what really changed my perspective. So they were, each of them, my own individual mentors. When someone asks you to be a mentor, that's the biggest compliment you could have. And I can't imagine anybody turning you down. So it's really someone that you connect with, that you say, you know what, there's a lot of commonalities. I like you, I admire you. Would you help me? Help me, show me where I need to go. No one's going to say no. And if they do say no, then they're not meant to be a mentor. So don't be afraid. What I do want to let you know, and this is a little bit off, being a leader can be lonely. You have to be comfortable with that, because you're going to be put in positions where you can't be everyone's friend. You know, it is a lonely place that's really there. It's kind of like you have this family, and you're responsible for the family, and we all have different personalities, so it's really understanding how to raise that family, how to educate that family, how to drive them, how to support them. That's what that job is.
I like that, and I like the idea that a mentor doesn't have to be a formal process even. And some, I think, relationships are where you ask the person to be a mentor and speak in your life, but like Genevieve was saying, a lot of people that I look up to, they have no idea that they're a mentor to me. And then also, side note too, is these relationships that we're talking about in high school and college, you kind of have a built-in network around you. But as you get older, the circle gets smaller. So you sort of have to build the relationships more intentionally. It's not like you're gonna have friends all around you anymore as you get older and in your profession. You literally have to stalk people on LinkedIn and ask them to get coffee, or like just get involved in stuff and make friends. I think making friends and making those mentor relationships is so important, because you just have to be more intentional, and it's nice because you can really pick and select who you want to surround yourself with too. So, Jennifer, you talked about this a little bit earlier of just the landscape of women in business and women in leadership and how it's changed so much over the years. And now I think is a really, really exciting time for all of us ladies. There's so much opportunity out there for us. All we need to do is step into it. And so I kind of want to turn it over and ask you ladies, what are some exciting opportunities that you're seeing for women in the world today? Are there any notable experiences that just make you excited about being a lady today?
I may be a little bit biased because I work in the social media world, but I've got to say, like, digital marketing, social media right now is something that I think that us ladies should really take advantage of. I'd say from like a consumer standpoint, but also from like a business standpoint, it's a very female-dominated industry that we should be taking part of. So even if you're not actively looking to go into like business or digital marketing, just being active on social media is a really great way to find people that have similar interests as you can go into collaborative projects with you. So start thinking of maybe ways that you can either be on social media or start to really hone your voice through your social media profiles.
I have a lot to say on this topic, but I think just in general, this might be a little bit controversial, but anybody who watches the news has seen that there's been a lot of negative press, and it's sort of a theme in the world right now of equity between not just sort of men and women in business in the world, but also diversity is a big thing. And one of the things that I heard recently was someone was offered a position. I can't remember if it was a board position or if it was a role or something. And she said to me, well, I don't know that they're really offering this to me because of my talent and qualifications, or if they're just offering it to me because I'm a woman and I'm Latina. And I said, who cares? Take the seat. I'm like, if you were a guy, would you be overanalyzing whether or not they were giving this to you? You probably wouldn't. You would just say, great, I'm getting an opportunity and I'm going to take it. And so a lot of organizations right now are starting to realize that they haven't been as equitable and haven't been as diverse, and they're sort of looking at themselves in a mirror and they're not really liking what they see. Now, whether that's social pressures or whether that's a real true desire to be more diverse and equitable, we don't know. But doors are opening for women, doors are opening for Black women, doors are opening for Latina women, doors are opening for Native. If you are a woman, regardless of your diversity, there are opportunities, and right now is the time to take them. And so that California just passed a law where corporate boards have to have a seat, a woman on the board, and at least one. And I've heard people say, well, gosh, the token woman, and I'm going, it's a step. And so that is what I would say right now is a good opportunity for people, and it's coming not just in positions, but also in the opportunities for funding and things like that. And so, whether we want to kind of tell ourselves and shrink, or whether we want to step forward and take the space, step forward, take the space, own the leadership role and the opportunities that are coming to us right now, and do the best possible job you can. And that's the best thing that you can do for other women, as well as people who are going to be coming up behind us.
Take it and figure out.
Take it, yeah. And if you don't know how to do it, no. So here's a story. My ex-husband was given a role as the GM of a winery. And a GM's job is heavily finance-based, and he had no idea how to do his job. And so I was actually doing all the financials for the winery at night. And he eventually learned. And he was never like having qualms about the fact that his wife was doing his job. He just learned it. And so in your case, step into your role, and then if you feel you need extra training, you need extra support, just immediately go and get it.
LinkedIn stock.
Yeah.
That's what we say. You can learn everything on there.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I'm working, because I manage a college scholarship program, working with a lot of college students, and what I'm excited about is I see the young ladies taking a lot of new career opportunities, new majors, and wanting careers that aren't your traditional female career choices. When I grew up, females we were expected to take certain types of jobs, and now I see more women in the healthcare field, criminal justice field. Several of my scholarship students are taking, criminal justice as their major. I see a lot more in the trades. I have a member of my NAVA chapter that, she runs a construction company. So, $2 million a year construction company. When I grew up, I would have never even seen a woman working in construction, let alone, running a construction company. So for me, it's really exciting to see, your career options are limitless. You can really do anything that you want to do and be anyone you want to be. So that's really exciting for me that all of you have that opportunity.
I grew up with boys. From the time I was really little, always hanging out with boys. So I've always been really comfortable hanging out in that world. But I also found along the way that I always believed in what my merits were. You should always believe what your merits are. huge opportunities for women and always have been is sales. Anything that's sales oriented, where you're out selling a product, because it does several things. One, it allows you to control your earning power. So when you sell something, you make a bonus. You're not at the mercy of a base salary and a merit increase. You're controlling your financial destiny. You're also controlling your schedule, meaning you come and go as you need to. The reality is, when I have these conversations with young women, when they go, you know what, I've been with the bank for a long time and they're bringing in this guy and he's making more money than me. How is that? I worked with him 7 years ago. Well, you decided to have a family. Those are choices that we all make. If you choose not to have a family, that's up to you. So your upside potential is just as equal to or aggressive as anyone else. If you choose to have a family, then you need something that's flexible for you, because they're both great goals, but you can't have both. So you have to recognize what that balance is. But for me, I have 3 children. And you know what? I worked long days, and I kept striving to the top. But when I got into sales, that opened the door for me, because I could control how much I wanted to earn, how hard I wanted to work, and what my schedule was going to be. The financial services industry for women is a huge opportunity, especially on the investment side and the financial advisory side. You've heard people who are certified financial planners, because we're seeing more and more women business owners. We're seeing more and more of you running businesses who need consultation and who want to work with women. That is a huge area right now that you should consider, especially if you like the financial side of it. To me, I see that as a big opportunity going forward.
Can we send someone up there to quiet the troops? Tyler, John, or Andrew?
I have a quick note about that. I think it was in Sheryl Sandberg. She wrote the book Lean In, and she made a comment that really resonated with me, which was like, when you're in high school and you're in college, you'll often see women, or even if they're in high school, younger, saying, well, I can't do this career because it's not going to be conducive to me having a family. I can't do this because I wouldn't be able to have kids. I'd be traveling too much. And I remember thinking that I couldn't go work in Big 5 consulting because it wouldn't be conducive to me having a family. But I was 23, 5, whatever, and single, and and so, now that I've spent a lot of years working really hard, and I'm now in a point where I have the flexibility and the income to be able to have a family. So when you're a little bit earlier in your career, I say just go for it, because unless you actually are pregnant in this moment, then don't make choices for yourself that are contingent upon a future that you don't know when is coming. Because let's say you did eventually get pregnant tomorrow. You have 9 months to figure out how to switch your career around. Babies take a bit to come.
So my last question, and this is a question I got a lot from you ladies, not so much leadership focused, but more career direction focused, and I thought it'd be worth it to ask it. What piece of advice would you give to these young ladies as they kind of wonder, what do I want to do with my life, right? Like, everyone's still wondering that, but what piece of advice would you give to a young lady when she's asking those questions of what should I do? Like, what's a good next step for someone like that to take?
I would say explore your options. Don't be afraid to take your time. Maybe figure out things that interest you, and what careers can be linked to that. Finding people or mentors that are in those positions, or entry points that you might want to learn from. But overall, don't be afraid to take your time. I didn't know my first year of college. I had zero idea. I thought I wanted to be a nurse. I hate blood. That was never going to work. But yeah, just really explore and pinpoint what really interests you, and use that as a jumping off point.
When I was in college, I put a lot of pressure on myself to like perform and about career. I graduated from college in 3 years, and I didn't do an internship, and I just immediately went out into the world. And what happened for me at that point was I actually highly regret only graduating in 3 years, because I didn't give myself the time to explore, and I had a lot of pressure on myself doing a lot of things I thought I should do, and I didn't really do what I wanted to do, and that's why I say if I could go back again and choose my major again, I would have majored in art history, because I was too busy trying to be what I thought the world wanted me to be instead of being who I really was. And I think there's a certain amount of just trust in the process. So, a lot of times we tend to think in these crazy like swings where we're going, well gosh, I don't want to just be one of those people who lives in a cabin in the woods and, farms for mushrooms and blah, blah, blah. No one's asking you to do that, but that doesn't mean you have to like go this other spectrum where you're doing something that you don't think that is your thing, but your parents really want you to do it, and it's going to make you a lot of money, but it's not really you, like who you are. And so I really wish I would have taken more exploration. I wish I would have studied abroad. I wish I would have majored in art history. I wish I would have just done me more than trying to be something, because I thought that I had this drive to achieve,
Yeah, I agree. When I went to college, I just worked and went to school. I mean, we didn't have clubs, we didn't have things like YEBW. I didn't have any of that opportunity, so when I'm working with my college students now, we really encourage them, try out different clubs, try out different classes, different majors, just explore until you find what you really love to do. Because most things you love to do, you can figure out how to make a living from them. You're already at YEBW, which is, a great exploration opportunity in itself. And there's lots of other camps, extra classes you can take from different organizations in the area that you live in, and just take those opportunities as you get them and figure out what you love to do.
So I agree with these two ladies. We all seem to think that when we get out of high school, we have to stay on this track. And there's no time limit. So stop and smell the roses, explore. That's what electives are for. It exposes you to things that you normally wouldn't think of, but it might pique your interest. I agree with you. I was too intense when I first was in college, and I didn't smell the roses, and I wish I had. So know that. I mean, I was a dance major. Look what I'm doing now. It will find you. You have to trust that. It will find you. You have to be open. You have to be open to it. And it might be a couple of tries, but eventually you're going to connect with whatever it is that you're meant to do in your career. And you might even be halfway through it. But so just be open-minded and explore, because there's no time clock on when you have to get it done.
Thank you so much. That concludes my questions. Now I want to turn it over to the audience for the next half an hour or so. And I want you all to ask whatever on your heart, questions you're still wondering, and we can just popcorn it, whoever wants to answer each of these questions. And a lot of you had really, really great questions on your registration form, so please, if you're comfortable, just ask them. Yes, and I will come up to you. Actually, you can.
Hi, I'm Jada, and my question is, how do you handle doubtful men in your field? How do you handle a situation where somebody is doubting your, female ability to handle a problem or complete a task or be in any positions? How do you kind of deal with that doubt? How do you prove yourself or continue moving on with your day or your career? How do you work it out?
think there's a couple different answers for this. We can each probably answer it a little differently. For me, it comes up all the time. I tend to ignore it. I think that's the best way, is even though you know they're doubting you, I will just ignore it and keep moving forward. And then if it becomes an issue that's going to block you, then that is sometimes when I might seek some help from a mentor or a friend. I had an instance one time where raising money, where somebody essentially said to me that they thought that I wasn't really able to properly negotiate some of the terms and talk through some of the financials. And there's no reason they should have thought that about me, because it was fine. And I really do think that they were just maybe doubting me because I was a woman. And so, in that instance, because they were essentially saying, I can't really talk to you about this because I don't think that you are able to, I sought sort of an ally to kind of help me move through that block. But most of the time, if you just ignore it, they'll eventually overcome their preconceived notion about you, hopefully. If they don't, then you don't need them.
Let's turn that around for just a second. If you're doubting someone, what's going to give you comfort to not doubt them anymore? Okay? So, you're going to show them. You don't have to explain your way through it. You're just going to show them. That's where confidence comes into play. Okay.
Anything else to add?
All right, so my question is, you guys said that confidence is key. All of you guys said it. What are some skills that we can use to achieve that? Because I know that everyone here deals with anxiety and walking into a room and going, oh, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So what are some things that you guys have that we can use as a skill?
So yeah, I'm a firm believer that confidence is a skill that we should continue to develop pretty much throughout our entire lives. I think there are a number of ways that you can kind of hone this skill and to continue to keep your confidence up. One of the main things is surrounding yourself with people that lift you up, with people that keep it real, with people that can really truly support you and be happy for you and your accomplishments. I think really just owning your intelligence or your strength, your ability to do what you set your heart out to do, and taking in even just small things that you're able to accomplish and seeing that as an achievement. Really recognizing that even if it's a small step, it's a step, and that you did it. So yeah, those are just a few tidbits.
I'm huge into personal growth. I think it's really important to constantly be working on yourself. And so I think that, that's something as a habit, I think that you can cultivate. And then one of the biggest things that comes from that is learning to not put yourself down before other people start to put you down. And so if you make that really work on your mental ability to stop talking yourself down, and you'll be surprised when you start to notice how much we all do that. Then it'll be easier to be confident.
You want a popcorn here? This popcorn? A lot of it is practice. I kind of equate it when the first time you jump off the high dive into the pool. It's really scary, right? And every time you do it, it gets a little easier. You usually have your friend behind you, egging you on. But the more you do it, because you know what the other end is. So, for example, walking into a ballroom for me was really hard. I used to hug the wall. But the more I did it, the more friends I made. Because you're going to find in the communities that you work in, it gets smaller and smaller. And when you've achieved it is when you walk into that room and you know everybody in it. Now it's like a high school reunion, right? You're saying hi to all your friends. So it's really about
practice. Knowing that you have the confidence, but just keep going through that door and it gets easier every time.
Thank you. I would just add to celebrate your small successes. Celebrate yourself in the process. So when you have to make a difficult decision about something, how do you narrow it down to your decision or conclusions?
You're talking about
Like when you approach like a difficult situation, how would you narrow things down to make a decision? Like how would you like conclude that this is the right answer that I should make? I guess for me, when I have to make a decision and I'm choosing between multiple options, I look at the pros and cons of selecting each option and then selecting the one that has the most pros.
I think also as women, we don't ever want to make the wrong decision. And we're so worried about making the right choice, the right major, the right career, the right friend, the right boyfriend. You just never know if it's the right decision really until after you make it. And so you can lay out all the pros and cons, which is a great way to do it, but also you just have to be okay not knowing if it's the right choice or not. So I would just lay that out there. You never fully know. And I think as women, we have to kind of sink into that a little bit more and be a little bit more okay with being uncomfortable in those situations.
My question is, what are 3 major goals to succeed in life?
I try to focus one day at a time to really be present in what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. I try to do what makes me happy, so even to try and see like glasses half full. So even if it's maybe something that I don't agree with completely or that I might have to compromise on, I try to always see the positive in any situation. And I try to give myself like positive affirmations and know that like I feel good about what I do, and that I feel confident in the path that I'm on, and to tell myself that I'm doing a good job.
It's really hard. I think one of the things recently common or in my life is I realized that a lot of the decisions that I have made and a lot of the things I was doing were to please someone else or that were for the benefit of someone else. And I started really noticing how I was doing things, whether it was small things like, going to coffee, to big things like accepting a job, and really examining, was I doing it for me? And was I doing it because it was it was something that was going to benefit me? Or was I, involved in something entirely because I felt obligated and it would help someone else? And the further along you go, and especially if you're a leader, you're like the kind of person who gets stuff done. And so people are going to start asking you to do things because they want you to be involved in it. And it's really important, I think, as a goal and a mindset day to day is to just always ask yourself if it's something you're doing for someone else out of obligation or because you feel like you have to, or is it something that you're doing for yourself? And I think sometimes it's okay to do things out of obligation, like, sometimes my dad wants me to help him with something. I don't really want to do it, but I do it, But then, sometimes people might ask you to volunteer for something, lead a committee, be a part of something, take a job, and you have to ask yourself, is it really going to benefit you, or are you just doing it because you feel like you have to,
For me, my number one is self-care. I make sure that I am taking good care of myself so that I can make good decisions, do good work, help all the students that I work with on a daily basis. And so it's important to to take care of yourself so you feel good and feel productive and mentally sharp, and just I encourage you to make sure you're taking care of yourself health-wise.
I think the bigger question is, what does success mean to you? Right? Because it's different for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Is it money? Is it that new car? Is it that title? So success is independent to all of us. And how you get there, and integrity is a very important piece. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror every day with decisions that you're making and feel good about it. So as long as it's headed to that track, every day, that greater power I ask, please help my children be successful in whatever success means to them. That's the key.
Hi, my name's Sarah. I really want to thank you guys for being here today, just to start off. My question is, what was the time in your career that you faced a failure, and how'd you overcome it, and what did you learn from it?
Oh my gosh, I was actually thinking about writing a book maybe one day. It would be called Failing for Fun and for Profit, like fun with Dick and Jane. Because I have had more failures than I've had successes, and some of them are crippling, embarrassing, kind of public failures. And for me, I think one of the best things I've been able to do is talk about it, because it's, it's something that we all do, and we hide it like it's this horrible scar. And, not to say you have to skip around telling everyone how you failed, but I think that one of the things you have to know as a leader is you are going to fail, and you're going to fail more often than you succeed. And so, the best thing that I think you can do is just kind of know, going in, that if it doesn't go well, maybe what would your contingency plan be? Or what is your plan B if it doesn't go well? Because it will not. If you're out there in the world doing things, a lot of things aren't going to work, and it's just part of it. Especially if you ever start companies or be an entrepreneur.
So I agree with your statement. We fail much more than we succeed, but I like to analyze my failures and learn from them so that I just don't make the same mistake twice.
Who was at University of Portland last night? Okay, so you probably didn't notice, but I thought I was going to be so prepared and print all the certificates ahead of time, months before camp started, so that we just write in names the night before, present the certificates at closing ceremony. I was going to be so on top of it, and the whole staff is sitting in the front row. People are about to start filing in, and I look at my certificates, and I realize that I spelled prod cut. So it said prod cut winner. And I sat there and I was like, I just pre-printed these 3 months ago, and I thought I was so on top of it. And it was just to me, the biggest failure, because I've had so many issues with these certificates over the years. And I was like, I cannot believe I just failed at this again. And then his staff were like, well, Dawn's not in charge of certificates anymore. Someone else is going to have to do this from now on, because this is just not going well. And I can't remember, how did we troubleshoot that? I think they all came up and we said, there'll be a surprise for you. Oh, you get a book. I think I said, I have a free book for you, and your certificate is waiting in the office when you get back. So after ceremony, I'm sprinting back to the office to print the certificates on a different type of paper, and anyway, it totally happens, and it happens to me and to us at YEBW all the time. We shield you all from it so you don't see it, but it literally happens all the time, and you just kind of learn to work through it, so it makes you feel better.
Okay, so it's not you. Hi, my name's Emma. But you guys said your majors in college were Greek history or dance, and although those aren't business majors, did you find problems when you went to the working world having a major in college that wasn't related to business?
Problems in the working world about
Like how, like you're working in like business, but you didn't major in like study it.
Yeah. I majored in communication, so journalism, and journalism teaches you to write, and it teaches you to write very, very concisely. And the program I was in was kind of hard, and it was very cutthroat. If you got a typo on a paper that you had to pump out really quick in the newsroom, you would fail, and you could have 3 failures before you were out of the program. And so it taught me how to write well, and I think that now that's a skill that seems to be kind of going away. And so that would be one thing. But then while I was in college, I didn't know this was a company, but I had an eBay store, and I would sell things, and that's how what? Not rubber bands, yeah. I don't think those would have done well on eBay. But, you know, like, I'd sell like fashion, like clothes, shoes, makeup, and I was shipping it all over the world, and that's how I was making like my pocket money. And then this movie, Napoleon Dynamite, came out, and everyone thought it was hilarious because he said really weird things. And so I started making t-shirts that said things like, I caught you a delicious bath, and like girls like guys with really great skills. And I would wear these t-shirts and give them to my friends, and everyone had an order form. And then if people complimented their t-shirts, we'd like take their order and make them one. And so even though I wasn't in business, I think I was just doing what was fun, which was selling Napoleon Dynamite t-shirts and stuff on eBay and like running around, and that translated later into the real world and into business, I guess, in a weird way.
I think along the way, you kind of learn along the way. So even though I wasn't a business major, when I was working in the bank, you know, I went on to banking school. I did continue my education more in the field that I was in. But I love what you're saying is a lot of our entrepreneurs didn't go to business school, and they're learning along the way. So it just prepares you. In fact, after my experience, I encouraged all my kids to become business majors. Some were finance, some were marketing, as a base, because I wish I had. But now they're starting their own businesses, being entrepreneurs themselves with that core. So again, it's a journey. There's no right or wrong answer. It's really what works for you.
Hi, my name's Aaliyah, and Candace, you were talking about in confidence how like surrounding yourself with people that bring you up. Once you build a relationship with someone and then realize that like they are good for you and like they don't build you up, how do you go about weeding them out like professionally, like in a good way?
This is a very good question. How do you lose people? I think you can go about it one of 2 ways. One way is just to be very direct and to tell somebody, like, you know, you don't create a healthy environment for me where I feel like I can thrive, where I can confide in you, and you can be very direct in that. Some people take that, and I wouldn't call it advice, but some people take that communication very well and can learn from that and will say, I'm so sorry, how can I be a better friend to you? And the relationship can sometimes grow. Or you could slowly wean them out and just, you know, eventually stop talking to them. It really is just kind of like what you feel like is better for your mindset. It's, you know, I think the important thing is acknowledging when those relationships have kind of run their course, and when they're maybe something that's a little bit more negative in your life than positive, because, you know, to really grow and be successful in your life, you need to have people around you that are going to lift you up. It's just part of life.
When you start to shift yourself, a lot of people will just kind of fall away because they'll start to feel like you're not really on their, you know, they can't, you know, when you're not indulging in their pity party with them 24/7 anymore. They'll be like, well, this isn't fun, and they'll go find someone who is. Or if you start being busy with other activities and other things that are more you, and you don't have time to go like fart around with that person anymore as much, they'll start to find someone else who will fart around with them. And so I think that's sort of when you say like weaning off, it's just you're doing your own thing, and they either come along or they don't. And most of the time they won't. So.
What was that one moment you knew you were on the right career path?
I don't know. I do. Okay, so I was working in I had like a corporate job, and I had a lot of corporate jobs, and I kept getting fired, and I was like, God, am I this terrible? You know, and so I had my eureka moment when I had gone to have tacos with a friend of mine who was a lawyer at this law firm called White Summers, and then he had left the law firm to join this tiny startup, and he was like, you need to come and have lunch. So I showed up at this office that seriously was scary, and it was really, really small and dark and weird. And he had an ulterior motive. He sat me down in a conference room with the 3 founders. They had no idea who I was or why I was there, and just, he bounced. And so I'm sitting in there for a while with them, and eventually we struck up a conversation. Like 2 hours later, they offered me a job, and I wasn't even really sure what they did. I was like, okay, so you're doing stuff with like mobile, and like it's a platform, but I just didn't get it. And so I totally kind of just felt into it. I went with it, and I just started learning. And so I took the job, and I remember there was sort of this eureka moment where like we had all these broken desks, and if you dropped a pen, it would like roll across the floor because the floor was like all messed up. And we were trying to raise and close our first like institutional round of financing, our Series A, and I got rid of all my suits, and I was wearing like a Star Wars t-shirt type thing with like a little jacket, and it was just chaos, total chaos. And I remember thinking, it just hit me, and I was like, I belong here. This is where I belong. And then I thought I was crazy because it was the opposite of what I thought I was supposed to be doing, which is working in like the glossy PR firm and corporate offices. I was like, I'm crazy. I'm not even sure we're gonna have money next month. But I just had that feeling here that it was where I had found my place, and you know, it didn't make any sense. But I still do work in early stage crazy startup companies, so.
I don't know if there was one specific moment, but I think there were a lot of little moments that kind of are leading me to believe that this is a great path to be on. I think the ones that really stick out are when like outlets or businesses that I like admire or that I look to reach out to me. So when I did my collaboration with Aerie and Well and Good, when I was on like the cover of Portland Business Journal, like those are moments where I'm like, okay, like these companies take me seriously and want to share my story and want to share my message, and that makes me feel as though this is something that I should keep doing. Because it's working and it's getting to people, and people resonate with it and can connect with it.
So we are not going to forget you. You've been very patient up there in the back. Okay, so we're not going to finish up till you have a chance. There were 2 times in my career. When I was in Alaska, I was debating between what we call the retail side of the bank, which is the branches you go into. That's what we call retail. And I made a decision to go to the trust side. And I remember going to the executive and then telling me that I was making a very big mistake. But I knew in my heart, no, I really want to do this. And I never regretted that decision. Later in my career, just so you all know, I'll be 60 in January. And about 9 years ago, my job was eliminated because of a regime change. And it hurt, because I worked really hard and I always excelled. And so I took 5 months to decide what it is I really wanted to do. So what would that make me, 52, 51? And I realized then that I really like working with people. I really like doing what I do. So when I came back, I was bolder, I was fearless, and I love what I do. So that was another major turning point for me. So don't think all of this happens when you're young and just getting started. It happens through your entire career.